Shaun is away, and or I believe he's at a conference or has another meeting, and Jenn said that she'll be assisting with her own staffing levels, so she's not sure how consistently she can attend these meetings. Start with just an overview. The agenda is fairly short today, but it is an important one to try to figure out the targeted goals for this work group and to talk about the overall goal for this group. So the focus area that was designed and created for this group several months ago was to identify and catalyze strategies to reduce operational costs, including cooperative procurement of services and tax breaks, etc. I'm going to shut this down just so I can have a conversation with you over here. So I can stop the screen share. And what I've been working on, just to give you a bit of background, is meeting with the different work groups and the steering committee. And based on the original mission of the initiative, the steering committee has come up with some language that's kind of their North Star. So what are the main things that overall this initiative wants to focus on? It continues to be support for ECE, support for wages, support for workforce retention and recruitment, looking at different models, trying to be a part of a legislation that comes forward on both the Vermont and New Hampshire side, and kind of being this place right now that holds the information and tries to get movement forward. I was able to meet with a group that's also called the ECE Advocacy Group, and it's separate from this work group. And Deli and some other folks are on that group. I'm meeting with them on Thursday as well. So trying to make the connections statewide in both New Hampshire and Vermont. And so the steering committee drafted the charter that has that big North Star and mission statement. And what we're going to try to do is identify for each of the work groups 2 or 3 specific things that each work group wants to focus on. And then the co-chairs from each of those committees will go to the steering committee and provide the updates and say, oh, here's what facility is working on, here's what R&R is working on, here's what advocacy is working on. Does this align with the mission or the North Star? Yes or no, and then keep the momentum going in that way, because we have had great opportunities for people to provide input, but it's getting mixed based on which work group, which steering committee you're on, and it's kind of getting repetitive instead of moving things forward. So it's not, and I also want to celebrate the successes of the work that has already been accomplished in this area. And so that's part of the charter as well, like from the beginning until now, what's been accomplished, what's searched, what's been looked into. I know Amy and others have done a lot of legwork, including, survey and report data analysis. So we want to capture all of that so it doesn't get lost. For this group, it seems as though with the main target talking about facilities models, one concept that has gone through is having Shaun continue to look into a Lebanon focused ECE center. And this group doesn't advocate, but I think this group weighs in and kind of gives a head nod. So Shaun went to his city council and there was unanimous support for looking into it. He went to corporate council of Ida Communities and that received support as well. There's going to be this, let's see, the 22nd, 6:30 to 8 is the regional leaders meeting with Shaun for him to provide the concept in general. And Amy, let me know if I'm mistaken. The size is between 180 and 200 slots. The focus is on infants, early childcare, but also other ages as well. So the ARPA funds would be used to actually construct it, new construction, potentially out toward the airport, not quite sure yet. And the city doesn't have an interest in running an ECE program. That's not their background. That's not what they do. So the conversation would be, you know, if it's built, who would actually oversee the philosophy, who would actually be responsible for the staffing and the care of children. All of those things would have to be figured out. If they have a governing board or what that might look like has yet to be determined. Right now, it's just a conversation as to, would this be beneficial? Would this help in some ways? And we also have heard from facilities wise that River Valley Club is considering expanding. I don't have too much information except for Elizabeth mentioned expanding by 180 slots, and I'm not quite sure. I think the time frame for that is 2 or 3 years out. Also important to know that the Leb city concept is also 2 to 3 years out as well by the time they get through all the processes that they need to do. So part of the work of this group would be not to necessarily advocate for the city concept, but to kind of give feedback and input to how to begin to create that concept, what that might look like. And Shaun is moving ahead to seek funds and doing that part of the work. There's legislation in regard to facilities and programs. I know once again, Shaun has been working with some representatives on the New Hampshire side, and it will be important for us to keep on top of what's happening in Vermont, potentially looking at stakeholders with Let's Grow Kids. So trying to look at that work and supporting that work on both the Vermont and the New Hampshire sides as it goes into potentially legislation. We're sharing lots of articles that people are reading. It seems right now that a good thing is that ECE is like a hot button topic. Everybody's talking about the need for it. So I wasn't here in the beginning, but the timing of this is great. And one of the things that the group from, I'll call it Concord, because that's where they met, is talking about is doing a storybook similar to the symposium idea, where different voices will be heard in regard to the need for early childcare. So that would be how businesses are impacted, how parents and families are impacted, the needs of ECE professionals. They're looking at doing kind of a storybook idea. So I sent them the 2 90-minute symposiums that I thought were really well done, just to give them a basis and say, hey, we've already done this part of it. Can we continue to work together and get the word out about the importance of this initiative together? And so, we have for this group, the ECE concept from Leb, legislation, and what Amy and I talked about that connects with this group, but Shaun just doesn't have the capacity to continue to follow up or the connections, is at one point we talked about having a consultant come and meet with early childcare professionals who might want to expand either their home or expand their center, and how much that might cost. And how do you know how much a bathroom is going to cost, or playground equipment, or fencing? So I think it was Charlotte mentioned connecting with Vermont Works for Women as a possibility of them providing the estimates. And Amy has the connections with people who might be interested. So over the next couple months, we'll try to find out if that's something that would help lift people, because we know people are so busy. Part of our work and the initiative is how can we help do some things that they've thought about, but they just haven't been able to wrap their minds around because they're busy all the time. So I know that kind of falls under facilities, but Shaun suggested that we keep that one under recruitment, workforce recruitment as a goal. Are there other goals that you think would fit well under the facilities and programs model to look into over the next couple of months?
Can I just update the one of the things that the way I see these 3 groups working together is that program models and facilities finding real money, and Julie knows what real money is, sustainable money, like lowering somebody's mortgage or, you know, putting them into a facility with, you know, a lesser rent, that money can then go to wages, which helps the workforce recruitment piece that I'm trying to do. All of these things are underpinned by a workforce shortage. We're looking at, from a point in time survey last spring in June, about well over 500 or 600 empty slots in the region that are licensed. Also preliminary numbers from Kim Vada's, that survey, Kim is kind of crunching right now out of 25 respondents. With some minimal investment, we're looking at building another 436 slots capacity. New Hampshire, Vermont, they have, the licensing is based on square footage, usable square footage. So they may have more square footage than they have the bathrooms. So 20 children per bathroom, they have enough square footage for 30, but they need another bathroom to add the 10. Those are the kinds of like easy wins we're trying to find. And also Kim's crunching the numbers right now to find out what can be done to, number one, possible capacity increase for the smaller centers to closer to the magic like 35-40 that she says is like the sweeter spot than being at 20 or 22. You can actually sustain there, and then finding real money. So Julie, we found just out of the 15 respondents, of the 25, 15 are nonprofits, 13 of them rent.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So, and the rent is exuberant for many. So we're looking at what people owe for money, you know, on a building. Can we help them pay down their building? Can we get one-time grants to, I would love to be set up with a plan and then plug in funds where they're available. So I go to Grafton County and I pitch, you know, 3 bathrooms, and then I go, you know, DHHS hopefully will come out with some money, and we can say, you know, in Upper Valley, we've done this survey, we can increase capacity and sustainability of wages, increasing and sustaining wages by investing X amount of dollars, philanthropy, whatever, but have the plan. They want to know what before I can ask for the money. So that's what we're preparing right now. The ECEA board obviously feels that, you know, the consensus of the ECEA is, if it were a local center, one of these 13 nonprofits, maybe moving into the facility and lab and increasing and continuing their mission to serve children in poverty, then that would work. That would be something that they could potentially be in support of, but at the same time, they don't want to miss an opportunity to find real money in other centers so they can compete with wages. So what has happened with the ARPA money that we're trying to tell the story of, Julie, to DHHS and to the public, is that a one-time infusion of 40 grand, they cannot raise wages for that because it is not sustainable. They can't find $40,000 a year. So after the first year, 20,000 after 2 years. So they're using it for other things, but can we guide them toward, whether they have leftover funds, whether other people have leftover funds, guide that toward real things like lowering their mortgage or eliminating their mortgage. If they eliminated their mortgage of $2,300 a month, we could find $40,000 in there every single year, like every year. That's one piece. The other piece is really the workforce shortage role in all of this, which is, irregardless, I mean, increasing capacity in 3 years, we need to have a pipeline built now. So that's something that the ECEA is working on, a workforce strategy right now. I just got off a meeting. I just got off a meeting with Let's Grow Kids and talked about creating having our network representing 4 counties be a network that is built into, represented by the work that's going on in Vermont, so that we could access their subpool list, so that we could share data, we could power buy some things. So we're working on that right now. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle to make all of this work, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And then Julie, the other thing is like, we're going to really ride this employee retention tax credit thing. I've already been talking to Kim.
Oh, good.
Trying to get,
And yeah,
if you or Kim could be our representative, I just feel like it would just make sense. Kim's been working, she worked with 17 centers on financial support, on financial, kind of understanding the financials right at the beginning, right in COVID. I want to say, just see what it was. It was like the fall, or no, it was actually right in 2020. I think it was like May of 2020 that she did it, all through into 2021. So they have, many of them have a relationship built with her already. But if I could say, you know, Julie and Kim, I mean, it's the same thing, talking the same language. The word got out that a small center in Coos got $41,000 back.
oh, really? Okay. Good. So that's a whole separate conversation for us to have a follow-up
so
conversation with
part of,
Jackie about that.
The lowering cost piece. The lowering cost is, you know, if you need office space in the Upper Valley to sit down and have, you know, go through people to get them enrolled, like that's what this group could arrange, all of that, and make sure that that can happen. But in order to lower costs, we have to find money. So
Yeah.
And I'll add to that. Oh, go ahead, Julie. Go ahead.
I was just going to clarify my role here. I had been part of the group originally when I was still working for the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, managing our childcare and nonprofit lending programs. I've since retired from the Community Loan Fund, but I'm back here with this group representing Early Learning New Hampshire, where I'm currently working part-time. But the funding and facilities pieces of this work are really important to me, and that's a lot of my background in working with Amy and others that I can bring to this conversation. So just wanting to clarify why I'm popping up here. And Jackie asked me to rejoin wearing my Early Learning New Hampshire hat.
It's fantastic. We're glad to have you, and to have you wear as many hats as you would like to during these meetings.
We all do that. We all do many hats.
Amy and I did meet with Patty, is it Moynihan? I think was her last name, from Mascoma Bank. I think it was Moynihan, to have these beginning conversations. Being a local bank, being a local bank, if it was a person who's currently in the profession or wanted to be in the profession and they needed funding, she said the important thing that they need to have first is the business plan, whatever that is, and be very concrete as to what their needs are, what their staffing would be, all of those kinds of things. But she did mention that, you know, Mascoma Bank, if the person had a business plan, would be willing to sit down and talk through different ways to potentially fund things. And they couldn't really do a shift of, you know, percentage of a mortgage, but look at, you know, if there was CDs or something, using that amount, because not everyone wants to put all their money out there. It's kind of scary. So could you put it in a CD and use that kind of thing? So she was very open to supporting early childcare centers. I didn't remember it, but Patty was actually a para educator at Marion Cross School when I was assistant superintendent for Hanover Norwich. So we had this like connection of like, oh, I know you, how do I know you? So she definitely understands the need for early child care and came at it from a very supportive position of yes, and even gave examples of people she knew who needed early child care, and understanding how it's changed, and talking with her peers about, you know, not being able to work and sustain and live in the Upper Valley. So there's a contact that might be useful for some people if they happen to be in a certain place to make that connection with. So I'm trying to, it came up during one of our meetings. So anything that pops up, I kind of write a note and then follow up to try to make those connections, because I do know how busy everybody is. So, for this group, we have kind of the LEB concept, which is now kind of Shaun connecting back with the different groups and seeing what kind of support there is for that, and him going for the ARPA funds. We have legislative work on both the New Hampshire and Vermont side. And Julie, that's kind of what you were referencing and Amy was talking about. And then kind of going back to the idea of the inventory, Amy, and what Kim is looking at as far as defining what are the individual needs of the professionals in the field, making sure that they are using all the funding that's available. That seems to be a bit of a gap on both the New Hampshire and Vermont side that I've heard. So clarifying what funds are available, having support to seek those funds because they're so busy. And then our group can identify, so as Amy said, when things come up, we already can push through that door, right? Instead of knocking gently, we run and go, hey, we already have this data. We already have X number of providers, and you will have that, with empty spots, impacts businesses and impacts so many other things. And I think if this group for October, November, December, try to hone in on what you just described and being able to have that documentation to run through that door when it happens would be key. And then we take this work, we bring it back to this to keep them aware of it. And then when there's places to advocate, that gets spilled over to the advocacy group. Hey, this is something we really need to have a pitch plan to shout out. Sounds like Moms Rising would be very much wanting to support the whole work. And they said, the person I spoke with said that she has a very big social media presence. We currently don't have, but we don't need to reinvent that wheel. So whenever we're pushing something out, I can make that connection with her. And when I go to the meeting Thursday, I'm going to ask that they keep us in the loop as far as what they want the word to get out about for vital communities to support it, because we are on both sides, Vermont and New Hampshire. And then the third piece is after the steering committee at the next meeting approves the charter, I'll bring the charter back. And what the charter does is, as I described in the beginning, it describes the North Star, it describes the intent, the purpose. That way, each working group, when an idea comes up, we can say, oh, does that match this charter? Does this match what we're supposed to do for this initiative? Does it clearly fall into that? Or is it a thing that makes you go, like, we're not quite sure? Then I can bring that back to the steering committee and have them weigh in. And so I'm hoping to kind of create this, our own internal machine where the working groups have their goals, and then the steering committee kind of wears that umbrella hat going forward. There's quite a lot of exciting things going on in each of the groups. When I think about the recruitment group and talking about a potential celebration in April, I think it was April, Amy. So that group's going to be really working on that thread. Advocacy is up and ready to get the word out to do whatever they need to do. And I just think where we need to put our efforts is clarifying that kind of pitch and plan, and also sharing it with the other groups in New Hampshire and Vermont, so we're all kind of saying the same thing. I think Deli calls it singing from the same sheet of music. So that's what I'm hoping for us to do. And it sounds like those three things would take up quite a bit of our time: the LEB concept, the legislation, and determining what the facilities are. Is there any other goal or specific targeted topic that you think this group could do? One of the big things I say a lot is it doable and feasible, right? So sometimes you toss so much stuff out that we get lost because we toss so much stuff out. And I just know we only meet once or twice a month. I want to make sure that there's synergy in what we're focusing on. And it feels like we are at that point of being able to drive things forward. You have had many more conversations as a group. Is there another topic that might have come up that you really think should be this group in the next couple of months?
Last one that you mentioned, I heard the legislation in the Lebanon Center, but what was the last thing?
looking at what specific facilities are needed. As far as the individual professionals, Amy talked a bit about creating this inventory of who needs what. And each one of those things is probably going to fall in a different bucket. But if funding comes through that matches the bucket, she can quickly act and say to that professional, hey, this money's on its way. Let's get this together. Where I also think we could use some help are people who have that knowledge, to share that knowledge either through a Zoom or, as you said, meeting in person. And nothing wrong with hand holding and walking people through. Not many people have a foot in the profession and also foot in grant writing and all those other things that might happen and don't have the time to do it. If we could be that resource to people and say, this matches you and this person's going to give you a Zoom call and walk you through how to apply for it, I think that would be really helpful for people. I keep hearing that coming up. And as far as meeting with Mascoma Bank, Patty said the key is creating a business plan. So with Tracy Hutchins, who is the executive director for the Upper Valley Business Alliance, now being on our advocacy group, she said, once you guys have your pitch and plan, and once I know what you need, I'll bring it to our corporate council or whatever they call it. And I'm sure that there are people pro bono who would help others do a business plan or help others get through paperwork, help others look at taxes, whatever it is to help them out. But they just need clarification. She also said that connections with getting the word out through the Valley News, and maybe she said something, I can't remember what it's called, but basically there's business alliance councils throughout the state of New Hampshire. So connecting with those folks, she talks about.
The SBDC folks, the Small Business Development Center, is that what you're thinking of? Yeah, they can be very helpful in helping folks put together business plans, because very often folks may not know where to start in that process. And it might be helpful to Amy's point. I think the money pieces that we're talking about here are complex. And maybe we need to think about how do we map those out, both existing resources separate from what Amy's talking about. If that is in fact a role of this group, how do we identify additional funding needs or sources? And what Amy was referring to in terms of the ERC, the Employee Retention Federal Credit, we're trying to seize on that immediate opportunity. We're being opportunistic because that's real money that could be made available to programs. So working with the Charitable Foundation to fund robust technical assistance statewide, including in the Upper Valley, to make sure folks are aware of that as a potential resource and give them guidance on determining if they're eligible or not. So that's something new that has come up, but it falls in that kind of money bucket framework.
So talking out loud, if there was a person whose job it was to part-time do that for New Hampshire or Vermont, New Hampshire Charitable Foundation through New Futures might be able to create such a position. Are those the right organizations that would do that? Where would that person fall under who would be able to give that? Or
right now it's sitting in Early Learning New Hampshire with the team of folks at Early Learning New Hampshire to do that technical assistance work, because this is a short-term opportunity where the funds are only going to be available through 2024, I think.
Okay.
So, and there are two pieces to that work. Public outreach and education, helping folks to understand what we're talking about. We've done some preliminary work there, and then providing the actual hands-on TA to help folks walk through the steps.
And that's your connection with Amy to get both Vermont and New Hampshire aware of what's happening, or just New Hampshire?
Right. Well, I think Amy's interest is in making sure that her Upper Valley folks get the TA. And then I think that's a layered question, how to do the same thing in Vermont.
Yeah, Kim Vaughn and I have been talking about what we could potentially do, even if it's outside the ELNH contract, to make sure every Upper Valley Center, like we stand at their doorstep until they fill out the application to see it, or to at least review to make sure that they're not missing eligibility. So that's part of that real money. I guess a couple things I wanted to include is that the ECEA is backing, endorsing, paying for Kim Bada to do that inventory piece. We'll call it the, program needs for capacity and sustainability or something like that. We're paying for that. We really want to see that go through. For example, when an RFP eventually, request for proposals eventually comes from the state of New Hampshire, I don't believe centers individually will be able to respond to that RFP. So my thinking is, and we have to figure this out, is if the ECA collectively asks for a pot of money to deliver based on that list, based on the plan, like we need to come up with a plan, and then we would do the RFP. I'm sure it's going to be a quick turnaround. The centers that need it the most are not going to get it. All the money's going to go to Manchester, like it always does. So I'm trying to I'm prepping to make sure money comes to Upper Valley. That's one piece for your programs, your, lowering cost piece. The second piece has to do with supporting startups, whether they be new programs, whether they be center-based or family-based. We are recruiting, we're finding people interested, we're trying to figure out the pathway to their landing. We do have a relationship with Stuart Gates of the SBDC. We've been working with him a lot. We do have the financial documents made up. We do have a spreadsheet of average costs and average things they need, like they need to cost out in order to open the center, based on facilities, the biggest piece, like rent by whatever. And then I also had a conversation, we're trying to figure out how much the ECA can lift on this. Can we facilitate people coming in? If it's like 2 people a year, I think we can do it. But if we end up with a load of people between family childcare and center-based in both states, how are we going to manage that? Make sure they are getting through. So we actually had a discussion with the Hannah Grimes Center. Is anyone familiar with the Hannah Grimes Center? From entrepreneurs, and they're piloting something down in the Keene area that's being paid for by PDG Region 1 money, which is, we're in that region in New Hampshire. That's our region. So they were very interested in sharing that opportunity. So I was trying to figure out how to meld what they know about the entrepreneurship. It's something called Business Lab. It's a 7-week business planning. Cost out of pocket for them is $600 for that. They walk you through it, all the portions that you need. They're trying to figure out how to navigate the licensing support. And then they were trying to figure out the fiscal management piece, which we've already built with Stuart Gates. So we own that. So we can just move that down to them if we decide to use them. But I'm just trying to figure if it's 1 or 2 and somebody pro bono wanted to do it, but we're just trying to, if we manage it and we can arrange that, that's fine. But if we don't find the capacity to do that, then we'll have to, and maybe it's better to outsource it to a program Region 1 wide. And then they said we would figure out a way, even if it's individually $600 for any Vermont provider that wants to go into that pathway. So yeah, there's a lot of steps, but the ECA is just trying to define our role of what we can do and what we can't do.
Who was the person at the meeting where Ruth and Allison were talking about PD, and she said, I actually do a lot of that in Vermont? Do you remember who that was?
Amelia Struthers.
I'll have to go back in our minutes. I'm trying to remember what meeting it was, but Ruth was talking about how she steps in for her staff to do some PD. And the person who was on was saying that she does a lot of that information from Vermont side. So I'll have to find out.
So that's Amelia Struthers. She works for Northern Lights at CCV.
That's okay. So would that be your counterpart?
So that's a career counselor for staff. What I was talking, or I don't know if you were trying to connect that dot, but what I was talking about is startups.
Yeah,
Brand
no,
new-
I just didn't know her role. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
so yeah, in Vermont, they have a program called Wonder School. We're experimenting with that right now with our family childcare, trying to explore what that is. And I've actually been talking to the Seacoast about that program because I want them to pilot it and fail and let us know what they did.
Yeah.
But they're waiting for me to pilot it, so we're trying to work that out. We're trying to see, is the homegrown version better for the Upper Valley, or is the kind of packaged Wonder School version better? Like I said, I discovered this homegrown version emerging in the lower part, like in Keene area. There's no purpose in us inventing it if they're going to. And these people that are coming to us saying they want to open a center, this would be where we would send them. So
Makes sense.
that's what we're trying to do. Once they get in and they need professional development, then we have counterparts on each side of the river for that. Once we get the staff.
So it sounds like once, over the next couple of months, with all the different areas that you're working in, it will be a great time to come up with that pitch and plan, hand that off to advocacy with also the needs of perhaps positions that might need, or ideas of the population of people that might be looking into starting a business, involving the Upper Valley Business Alliance to see if there are people who could be mentors to support as well. Besides you, figure out who the counterpart might be for that on the Vermont side too. Right. It seems like these next 2 months is identifying the need, clarity for the need, actual cost, and just like you said, Amy, I know trying to get building aid for many years. The building aid just went to the larger schools all the time. Rather than Lebanon, because when they ranked us, we were pretty good. So they didn't, we didn't have mold, thank goodness. We didn't have major things. And that went to, so if you can't define the dire need as well, the funds don't head your direction. So it sounds like what you're doing is defining that dire need, that kind of seesaw that needs to
happen. Kind of identifying our, everywhere's got capacity issues. So if we can organically grow capacity as well within established centers, it's a lot less expensive than opening new ones.
Right. Is there any other business that the group wanted to talk about today? I think we have a good sense of draft goals that I will share with Jenn, although she mentioned that she won't be able to attend the meetings for a month or so as she's helping with staffing, but with Shaun, and then just keeping this group moving in that direction. Anything else people wanted to mention or talk about? On a side note, I am on the kind of the board for Hartford Area Tech and Career Center, who is kind of revitalizing their adult education program. And they're going slow and steady, but they're on my mind because they are opening an LPN program in the evenings. And they mentioned another program. There's a new head of the adult program, but I'm wondering down the line if we might want to have a conversation with them, because this is such a dire need. Perhaps have an adult program that brings adults into it. I don't know what the training would be. I don't know what it would look like, but I'm just trying to think about staffing and recruitment. That's what they're trying to do with nurses coming in. And it might be another way to just get people who might be interested in it. The hard part is, once again, it's time, right? It's in the evenings. Who has time to go to those kinds of programs? But worthwhile to just have a conversation. I think it's always worth it to check off the box and say, we did look into it. We did plant those seeds. For these reasons, it didn't work out now, but potentially to recruit people down the line, that might be a pathway that people are interested in. So I mentioned that as I'm going through the week and have this in my head, and I'm connecting the dots as we do this work. So terrific. Our next meeting, I'm going to pull up our agenda. The other things to briefly mention that we're on the original goals. If you, hopefully thumbs up if you can see the goals. Yeah. So there were zoning regulations and other code modifications were part of the conversation back then. Discussion about public-private partnerships. Is that the example of LEB building something, but then others would come in to run it? Okay. And then building business literacy skills and supports. I think that falls back to perhaps the connections with the Upper Valley Business Alliance, and also the group that you mentioned, the Small Business Council, Julie, that you talked about. And so we'll keep those in mind. It seems like we're heading in a bit of a different direction, but I always think that that's okay. These were goals from June, and a lot has happened since then. You'll note that the agenda looks a bit different. I've been trying to put the Zoom link in it and then the meeting notes from the last meeting.
Right.
So if you hadn't had a chance to look, you can hop on, refresh your memory. Our next meeting is Wednesday, October 5th from 6 to 7:30. By that time, Shaun will have held the Upper Valley Regional Leaders Conversation, which is happening this Thursday, and can give an update on that. And he would be planning what he's calling the Upper Valley ECE Conversation. So after talking with the regional leaders, he's going to go and meet with another group as well to get their feedback and input. Great.
Is there just a question, because I had a hard time. I had an old meeting invitation that had an old Zoom link for this meeting today. Is there a Google in that drive? Is there like, can I access it and always find the Zoom link in there, or what's the best way to get into the right meeting? Because I had an old one for today.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it works, Leona, because we did update, I think, the Zoom links.
I'll check Jess and see if you are on our list, and
Okay.
yeah, we've had
Okay.
some changes happening recently, so
Sure.
we'll hopefully
Yeah.
iron out those details.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for letting us know, though, because we want people to attend and participate, and we don't want people to get frustrated being in another universe and trying to get
Yeah.
into the meeting. So
I think
appreciate
usually I get an email with a reminder and the link. So usually, but I didn't get it today for whatever reason. I don't know if it got stuck in my,
What I've been
spam
trying to
filter.
do is not send as many different emails because people are getting lost, and send one that is the ECE work group agenda, and then within that agenda have the link.
Okay.
But it's a good idea for us to also, I've been trying to get advance so people have a chance to look at them in advance of the meeting. But it's a good idea to send out a reminder, and so I'll take a note and we'll do that going forward. So thanks for letting me know. I hope everybody has a great day. It suddenly turned fall. So summer's kind of over and the leaves are changing, that's for sure. And I hope you have a great day. And Leonie and I are gonna stay on for a few more minutes and catch up. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi.
How are
I
you?
just, I'm good. I just want to make sure sometimes it's easier for me to talk things over versus emails, just to, I just wanted to make sure that Esther sent me like kind of her list of rundown. And I guess per Jess's comment, how do you see, like, do you want me to be managing those lists for the
When is
invitees?
Esther's last day? Is her last day today? I don't. It came out on the
I
news.
honestly, I don't really know. It's all kind of been very confusing for
So,
me.
I can only imagine, because you helped us bridge and then we were set, and it's like, throw the rope out, get Leona back. So I received an email from John saying that due to family reasons, Esther was leaving. I think within that email, he might have mentioned the date. I've been out of town, so it didn't click with me. I just knew that, we had the meeting today. So I think what might be a good idea, Leona, is what if I set up a Zoom with you, me, and John, and just kind of went through what meetings are coming up. I'm not quite sure what Esther did or didn't do, or where she left off, because she started like the Tuesday after Labor Day.
Yeah, I can actually read out her like meeting, or I can share it with you. Just so we're all on the same page. Because otherwise. So it sounds like there was some changes being made in kind of like the organization of things. So that will hopefully make things easier. You should get an email to your inbox.
Okay. She was trying, so I know the things she was trying to do was update who's in each committee and ask the co-chairs who's actually still around and get that information out. I know she was, how I would work with her is I was sending the draft agenda to the co-chairs and to Esther and asking her to add the Zoom link to that agenda.
Okay.
And then I had created a folder that said work groups and steering committees or something like that, July 2020 forward. And then each of the committees or work groups was listed underneath it. And I was trying to add the agenda and the minutes or the recordings in a folder for each of those groups, so that if we went, what happened in September, we'd have the minutes and the recording for this group under that Google Drive major folder. And she had done some work with Zoom, but sometimes she would come in as Hank, so I'm not quite sure if she went through his account.
Yeah, so I can explain the Zoom thing just so maybe it has some more clarity. So we have 3 accounts, and now she's put all the accounts under one account. All the meetings under one account. So that's Hank is the email that's under. Okay. So that's why.
And so that's where I think she's been. I think, does she generate the Zoom meetings and the link?
Yeah, I have to get into that account and see, but I'm hoping that it's just like the Zoom links will stay the same because it's a reoccurring meeting. So we won't have to fuss with it too much.
Yeah, that can be, I know myself, waiting and thinking you're waiting for the host to open something up and you're just on the wrong one.
Yeah.
It's on your calendar. And then, I saw a note today, I haven't opened it, but like the headliner of it subject from John was just trying to talk about his posting for her position and the timeline for that. And just how we keep things moving, because it's going to be an important couple of months, I think, for this initiative. So would that make sense to have a meeting with the 3 of us? Should we invite Esther to that meeting and ask her what she's done and where she left off because it's in her head? Or I don't know.
I don't know if it seems kind of straightforward what she did write out this nice thing, so that seems pretty clear. But I think just in general, I guess I can't really clarify what I want clarity on right now, but it would be helpful to kind of know what the timeline would be for hiring the new person, and kind of if there's other ways that like I can be supportive besides just like kind of this back end piece. I just don't want to I want to just keep the lines of communication open, I guess.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that very much. So are there particular days and times that work for you? Are you in the Upper Valley, or where are you?
I am in the Upper Valley. Yeah, I live in Norwich.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. I think next week opens up for me quite a bit. Usually, let's see, usually after 1 on like Tuesday onward. Okay. Looks pretty good next week.
I will look at my schedule and then get back to you and John, just try to do that and catch up as well. And I don't think she started some of the other parts of the project coordinator position, but I completely understand that because she was just trying to learn the basics for the first 2 weeks. So Yeah, I'm finding this in my other hat, my other job too. Like lots of people are making decisions and changing things around. So
Mhm.
I'm just kind of used to it now. And it's like, okay, well, all right, then what do we need to do? So I thought she was doing a good job, and I'll miss working with her, but things happen and I really appreciate you stepping in and helping out. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and so then can you add me back to the list for the agendas? And I guess what I'll do is before, like I'll clean up these notes, send them to you, have you kind of look them over
Mhm.
for your approval. Does that system work?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. That would be great.
Okay.
You do very well with the minutes. So sometimes I'm just catching a few things here or there, and it's helpful for me. Facilitating, when I read minutes, I go, oh, that's right, we did talk about that.
Gotcha.
It's
Okay,
helpful. Well,
very
thank you
good.
so much. Hope you have a
Yep,
good afternoon.
you
Take care.
too. Thanks. Bye.